And now we're going to take a look at the key ballot questions this upcoming election in Rhode Island. Ballot question 1 asks voters to approve of a $250 million bond for improving schools. If it's approved, the bond would go to individual school districts to assist in the construction of new public schools and also to renovate older buildings. Districts would be able to apply every year for 5 years. The question now is whether Rhode Island voters will approve this expenditure, along with numerous other proposals on the ballot statewide and in individual communities, to spend a lot of money to improve schools in one way or another. Mark Murphy is the editor of the Providence Business News, which outlines the spending proposals in some detail in the current edition of the newspaper. The comment from the Education Commissioner, which leads off the article, kind of states the situation in no uncertain terms.
Well, yeah, he says he's embarrassed that children are forced to go to some of these schools. But it's never a simple question when you talk about the school funding. And we looked at in the spring, actually, how much money, when this was first being talked about, how much money can the state take on in debt? Rhode Island already has one of the highest per capita debt totals of any state in the nation. So you have the sort of the irresistible force, immovable object kind of thing. These schools absolutely need to be either rehabbed or in some cases, some dire cases, replaced. And yet the state, the citizens, there's a sort of a limit to how much you can take on in debt, really, and have a strong functioning economy.
Usually just before the election, groups like the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council and some others offer an opinion as to whether the state can afford all this debt. So I guess we'll hear about that later, unless they've already commented. But is there enough will, do you think, in the Rhode Island voters to fund this? And there are some other pieces of proposal too that we'll talk about.
I think there is enough will, but we have to remember also that this is a proposed $500 million plan. This is only for $250 million. So the voters will have to come back. It'll have to be approved by the legislature to go on the ballot again in 4 years, and they would have to approve that in addition to whatever else the state has on the ballot. And those things generally have been approved as well. I mean, the public has a strong appetite for investing in higher education, which is on ballot 2, and also on sort of green and environmental initiatives, which are a series of them, which is ballot initiative 3.
Right, and we'll see how good their appetite is, because aside from this question 1 for K through 12 buildings, there's a question 2 statewide for higher education facilities. And then you also mentioned in the article, outlined quite extensively, that there's a proposal on the City of Providence ballot and roughly half a dozen other communities for all their individual projects.
Right, and those are all school related, and that's one of the things that the people behind the statewide ballot also wanted the cities and towns to get involved. And so Providence has a significant amount of work to be done. It's the largest school district in the state and probably among the worst, in the worst conditions. So you have both the state helping it out potentially, as well as its own citizens taking the bull by the horns and taking on some more debt.
No one seems to oppose the plans in their entirety. There are some bits of criticism about how this is to be implemented, certain aspects of it. Again, it's all outlined in the current edition of the Providence Business News. Well worth reading before you vote on these issues. And Mark Murphy, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Frank.